Hello, welcome to this week's episode of the Combat Chatters podcast. And this week we're going to be talking about the upcoming UFC Fight Night. It's Tsarukyan versus Dariush. It's an interesting fight night, actually. It's quite a good one. We don't often see fight nights which are this good, really.
Yeah, I mean, this, from the whole main card is stacked. There's not one fight on the main card that I'm not looking forward to. Obviously, last week we had the break, no UFC, which none of us enjoy, I'm sure. But the main event and the rest of the fights are something to get really excited for this week's one.
I'd definitely say I think almost all of these fights are really exciting, and I'm fairly confident on my picks. I don't know about
Yeah,
you.
yeah. There's a few I'm confident, and a few not so much.
There are a few which I feel like I have an idea of how they're gonna go. Like, I feel very confident in it, but at the same time, there's also that part of me which thinks that it could go the other way.
Well, you're on a roll at the moment with your picks, so
At the moment, this could be the changeover. This could be the decider.
hopefully.
Hopefully not.
Yeah, so the first fight on the card, Pinchel Soriano against Dustin Stoltzfus. Stoltzfus coming off not quite a bad loss against Abus just over a year ago, but this is a decent step down in competition where he might be able to find it onto winning ways.
So this is a really interesting one. Looking at Soriano's last performance, I wasn't particularly impressed with it. He had a really good corner, which was telling him exactly what to do, and he just wasn't doing it. He was very much just trying to fight in the pocket, and he just kept throwing this uppercut, which, in fairness, was working. His opponent was ducking down, but it just didn't seem to be causing any real issues. Stoltzfus, like you said, he had that really bad knockout, although in fairness, it was against Avis Magomedov, who we did talk about recently, and he is just such a prospect at the moment.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much we can go over that as far as a measurement of what his ability is, although he hasn't fought in a while.
And I think you can say the same about Soriano. His last loss coming to Roman Kopylov, who is on an absolute tear at the moment and just got some brutal knockouts in those fights that he's winning as well. And an elite kickboxer, I think maybe even a K1 background. Don't quote me on that, but um, both of them coming off really tough matchups to explosive strikers. And I think they're both better fighters than what they showed in those two fights.
No, definitely. So these were both really high level opponents. We're seeing how much of a prospect Kopylov is at the moment.
Mm,
What he was doing as well, you could definitely tell that training in Dagestan has really improved his wrestling.
yeah,
It's looking almost like he's a Dagestani wrestler.
yeah.
So it's really interesting. With this one here, it's a hard one to call. I'm gonna look at both their previous performances just because I'm thinking that's how they're going to be fighting this time round.
Well, I
I've
hope not.
well, hopefully not, but more so in the sense that not so much in the case of Stoltzfus actually.
Yeah,
He's not going to get finished in 33
yeah,
seconds. But looking at Soriano, he wasn't really managing that range. He was kind of trying to fight a bit too much in the pocket, trying to brawl a bit too much, I
mm,
thought. And the boxing was very good. It was nice, dirty boxing, but I
yeah,
feel like that will only get you so far. With Stoltzfus, he has this grappling ability, which I don't think Soriano has. I don't think we've seen enough of really. And I think that he's definitely the dominant grappler. Although Soriano does also shoot,
yeah.
so it would be interesting. I feel like you're not doing that if you don't know how to grapple. Although it does also add a mix into it. It's something which we see a lot of boxers in the UFC do,
Mm.
throwing a takedown just
Yeah,
to
keep your
upset the
opponent
rhythm.
thinking, yeah. And I think Soriano was a national champion in college wrestling, so he's definitely got that sort of background too. Not seen him use it loads. We've seen Stoltzfus grapple with some very good people. I mean, he was looking very good on the ground with Mershaw until he got subbed in the last round. Gave up his back in a silly position, but he was winning that fight. And he's struggled in the UFC, but if you get a big win like that, we could be. He's a couple minutes away from looking at his career probably a lot differently from now because beating Gerald Mershaw in that sort of fight, well, that's the fight Mershaw wants you to take place, and he's got like 20 plus submissions, so um, he's definitely showed to be the more dominant fighter on the ground. I think Soriano, I'm kind of leaning him, and this is just my opinion. I think the knockout to Abus being just over a year ago, I think maybe the confidence can't be too high after that. And Soriano is someone who looks to put the pressure on very early. And, if he wins, he has won a lot of his fights by knockout. He's got very hard hands. I think he did wrestle more in his sort of early days before the UFC. And, once you get one of those knockouts, you kind of fall in love with it. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. For me, this is probably the one I'm least confident on, but I'm going Soriano, and I'm gonna go second round TKO.
So it's interesting what you say about the he's putting the pressure on you instantly, which I think you are right. He definitely does. He's very much from the get go. He's in your face. He's boxing. He really
Mm,
shit with dirty boxing, and he has got more than that. I feel like though when it does come down to starters, he's a lot more better with the distance management. He
mm,
likes to kind of fight at range. He does enter your range when he's striking, but he's very, very much striking in the sense that he's entering and getting back out and
mm,
entering and getting back out. And when he does enter, he might shoot for a takedown. I think that starts with the leg kicks as well, something
yeah,
which he does very well for distance management. I think that Soriano's going to have a hard time putting it together. Although saying that, like you said, he was knocked out only a year ago.
yeah,
So we don't know how fighters react with their chin to having been knocked out only a year ago. Sometimes they come back and their chin looks absolutely fine, and sometimes they haven't got a chin.
yeah,
And that was a pretty brutal knockout from Abus, who is an absolute prospect at the moment. If his chin is tested and it's not what it needs to be, then he could very definitely get caught out. But I think with the defense and the distance management, I can see him taking a decision.
yeah.
I don't think he'll put him out,
Hmm.
but I can definitely see him having the better of the exchanges.
Yeah, I think he probably is just the more skillful fighter, and usually I would pick the more skilled guy. But as a fighter, everyone's got big egos in this game, and coming off a first round knockout like that, I haven't been able to compete in a year because of it. Probably not due to injury, just due to probably doing the smart thing and taking a decent amount of time off. But it's hard to bounce back, even confidence wise. The chin might be there, but if the confidence in there, the chin will crumble down with the confidence very quickly in the fight, and I kind of see that's what's going to happen. I think Soriano just with that pressure is just going to hit him hard early and kind of have him moving back the whole fight. But yeah, maybe if it was different circumstances, I would go Stoltzfus too. But yeah, I'm not sure on this one.
It's a hard one, really. It's a hard one. I've called this one. I feel quite confident on this one, but I could potentially have gotten it wrong.
Hmm.
I don't feel like this is one of the ones I'm unconfident on, though. Moving on, though, Clay Guida versus Jaquim Silva. This is an interesting one.
Yeah, Hakim Silva coming off a decent performance against the guy in the main event on Saturday night in Arman, and he had Arman on skates in real big trouble, and you can see how powerful he does hit. I think it was just a big right hook or left hook that he hit him with. I can't remember off the top of my head, and that's the most trouble we've seen Arman Tsarukyan in, and for him to be able to do that, and I think he's got a lot of knockouts. Maybe off the top of my head, I think he's got 7 wins by knockout off a guy who's predominantly a BJJ guy. He's a very good grappler, and Clay Guida, I think he's pretty much 43 years old. I think like he's 42 and 42 years old. Sorry, he's 41 years old and 11 months or something like that. I'm pretty sure. So he's getting on now a bit. Did have a good win not too long ago, where he still showed that he could sort of really apply that pressure. That's the way he wins, his dominant sort of wrestling and dirty boxing style, and that's the way we've seen him for ages. And I encourage everyone to think maybe you watch Clay Guida now, and because this is probably the third generation of fighter he's been fighting, that maybe his skills don't look very sharp and he doesn't look like a great fighter, but there's probably a lot of new fans that came through lockdown and stuff, where this sport's the only one that's been showed that don't know what Clay Guida used to bring to the UFC octagon. I think he's been fighting since in the UFC since like 2006 or something.
It's 2006. It was UFC. It was like UFC 50 or something. What was
Yeah,
it? It was like UFC 50. I think maybe it might have been 60, 65, 66, 64 maybe.
which is just crazy how long he's been in. And he's put on his. If you haven't watched his fight with Diego Sanchez, that's one you have to watch. Just an absolute bloodbath. Both fighters just non-stop swinging the whole time. That is just one of the craziest fights you can watch in any combat sport. So this guy just, even now, he brings a lot to the table, like heart and determination. But this is a tough matchup for him to get through.
I mean, it's a difficult one, and it's with Clay. He's been in the UFC for so long. He's beaten Nate Diaz. He's beaten Anthony Pettis,
Yeah.
RDA. He's fought all the top competition in his prime, and he's continuing to fight high level opponents every
Mm,
single fight. The trouble is, like you said, he's probably fought three generations of fighters, and the generation of fighter which Clay was the UFC now is the best fighters, the best upcomers are new generation fighters.
Yeah,
They're fighters who are good at everything. They excel at everything, and they might have one attribute which is slightly better than others. But if we look at the Tsarukyan, who is, in my opinion, probably one of the best examples of a new generation fighter, him the likes of Gamrot,
yeah.
they have maybe wrestling as their base, although Tsarukyan has it already, and so does Gamrot.
Hmm.
It's hard against these guys. It's really hard. His last fight out was against Rafa Garcia, who was also very similar to him, I'd say. Very much a dirty boxer. And like you said, he's got a lot of heart. He's very tough,
Yeah.
and that's what wins him a lot of fights. Jacob Silva, was it a flying knee we saw him finish? So, or it might have been the lead up to it.
Yeah, I can't remember off the
I
top
think
of my
he
head.
dropped on the flying knee and then finished it off. He has it all really.
Hmm.
On the feet, he is so technical. Clay Guida, he doesn't really implement much into it other than, like you said, the wrestling, as well as that dirty boxing. The dirty boxing is effective. However, against these new generation guys, there's only so much you can do really. He doesn't really throw any kicks.
Yeah,
And it is very much, I don't want to say one dimensional, two dimensional, because that feels quite disrespectful. That is what a lot of it is.
yeah,
It is very much very basic and very simple. You look at Jacob Silva, he's got kicks, he's got punches. He can also do a bit on the ground as well. Although Clay Guida also has that wrestling, which is also very good at. I think Jacob's going to finish him personally. I think he's just going to pick him apart. I think he's going to use that range really well. Clay Guida's best when he's in the pocket, and Jacob isn't going to be having him in the pocket. He's not going to be exchanging a pocket because that is where Clay Guida is most dangerous, and it's not necessary.
hmm. Just an interesting point about the sort of new generation players. Would you consider Silva kind of the new gen? Because he's got some losses that, yeah, in hindsight, don't look so great on his record. I mean, lost to Ricky Glenn, Nasrat Haqparast, Vince Pichel. So there's some wins on there where, I mean, I don't think Clay Reeder's going to win this fight. I'm going to be honest, but if Vince Pichel can do it, he's around the same sort of age. Can Clay Guida get it done? Maybe I'm not. I don't know.
So whether Silva is new generation, when I think of new generation, I think of these fighters who are they do everything from a technical
Yeah,
perspective so well. It's almost as if they're experts in everything, and the way they piece together, it's not like they're fighters who have came from a jiu-jitsu background per se and have joined the UFC and they're still working on their striking. They've kind of gone in as MMA fighters
mm,
and they've learned everything and they've trained everything as MMA. If that makes any sense. You look at Gamrot. I know Gamrot is very wrestling based, and I know that Tsarukyan has a strong wrestling base, although he's also very good at kickboxing. With Tsarukyan, he's kind of the perfect example. He's got everything. The way he puts it all together, you wouldn't necessarily assume anything really with
no.
him.
Yeah, he's one of these fighters that just kind of are just so good at everything.
And this is the thing, like you look at a lot of these older fighters who were previously champions, or I'd even say maybe like Pereira's. Pereira isn't, in my opinion, a new generation
No,
fighter
no,
at all.
definitely not.
He's
Especially.
he is a specialist. He's a kickboxer who has gone into MMA, and you can definitely see that from the way he is. He is very much a striker, but he has also got that grappling as well, and we did also see that. So whether I'd call him a new generation fighter, he still very much is more striker oriented.
Yeah,
So I wouldn't call him a new generation fighter. However, I call him a fighter from maybe 2015, 16,
yeah,
that kind of generation, like the
yeah,
Connors and
yeah. I
stuff like
agree with
that.
that. Yeah,
Not as in he's
not
as
on
good
that
as Conor
level. Yeah.
Gregor, but that kind of style.
Mm. Yeah, and he does kind of have it all, but he shoots a very low amount of takedowns. I think it maybe even less than one per fight on the actual stats wise. And a guy with his jiu-jitsu, you always want to see him shoot more takedowns. Clay Guida, he's probably not going to take Clay down. He's going to want to keep this standard, and he's just going to have such a power and speed advantage early on the feet. Maybe Clay can tire him out, but it's going to be a rough time getting through those first two rounds. And because of that, I'm going to go ahead and give my prediction. I see Hakeem Silva finishing him in the second round. I think Guida's just tough enough. I think he'll get hurt and clipped in the first round, and sort of just survive his way through on the ground, and then finished off in the second.
So I agree with you. I don't know how hurt he's going to get with Clay Guida though. His head defense is very good. He's always kind of covering up, which you have to when you dirty book like that. You
Yeah,
can't really walk around with your hands down. though we do see it with some fighters, but not so much of these dirty boxers. He looks like a boxer. If MMA was a sport where you could only box and you could only shoot for takedowns, he'd be one of the best UFC fighters.
I mean, he was when he was in his prime, so
And that's the thing, and that's that generation.
yeah.
Again, that was back in what, 2010
Yeah,
to 11, to all around that time. I can personally see him getting picked apart. I think there's going to be a lot of damage to the body as well.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think that's
Body
really
kicks.
going to have to be the way. And the leg kicks into the distance management. Something you can't disparage though is Clay Guida is tough.
Yeah.
He is so tough and he can take so much. And he's not somebody we're seeing getting finished all the time.
No.
It's very impressive for someone who's 41 and has had 58 fights.
And and that's why we're happy watching Clay Guida fight. I think in his last fight, he kind of pranked the retirement just so he could have a speech afterwards, which Dana White wasn't happy about. But he's not one of these fighters like a Tony Ferguson where we're kind of begging him to retire at this certain point. For me, you can be 50 years old, and if you're not going out and getting absolutely smoked every time, carry on fighting. For me, it gets bad when they're getting finished all the time, and that's not really starting to happen to Clay yet. And it wasn't that long ago he picked up a win, so maybe he can get another one. This probably won't be the best matchup for him to get, if I'm honest, but maybe he'll fight again after. Maybe this will be his last fight. If this is his last fight, I hope the UFC are notified about it and they get to have a really good moment like they did with the sort of Korean zombie moment and stuff. Because in my opinion, he's on that sort of level where he didn't win a belt, but if you look at the people he's beat some legends in the sport. So he does deserve a really good send off if this was to be his last fight.
Almost like an honourable champion.
Yeah.
To an extent.
The people's champion.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be interesting as well to see if he would go into something like boxing, because he'd tear up in boxing.
Jake Paul Clay Guida.
Now that's criminal. That's so disrespectful.
God, Jake Paul does like picking on the smaller guys.
Well, you have to think though. I mean, Ngannou, right? You wouldn't look at Ngannou and think, okay, he's going to beat Tyson Fury.
No.
He didn't beat Tyson Fury, but he did.
Yeah, he did.
So with Clay Guida, we've seen he can actually box. This is somebody who we didn't know could really box, although his striking was very good in the UFC. Go out and do that to Tyson Fury. Who's to say Clay Guida can't do that? Because we know he can box, and that's the thing. Maybe he'll be even better.
But I do also think if you took away the threat of the takedown and the clinch, then he probably can't box, let's be real.
And he's also 41.
Yeah. So maybe not see Clay Guida in boxing. Bare knuckle. Imagine if he was a bit younger, I'd be screaming for Clay Guida in bare knuckle. His fight with Diego Sanchez, if that was bare knuckle, someone's facial features are coming off because of that. They were busted up already, so he would have had some absolute bloodbaths in bare knuckle if he went over to something like that.
There'd be like no eyelids by the end of it.
Yeah, that'd be like when Artem Lobov went over and fought Jason Knight. They had two faces at the end of that. That's the sort of guy he is. He just embraces the war, and good luck to him this weekend. I hope he can get the win. I don't see it happening, but yeah, legend of the sport. So I hope we just wish the best for him.
I definitely say, especially someone who's that much of a vet.
Yeah.
Moving on, this is one I'm quite excited for. I feel quite confident in this one, although
Same.
I'm very confident in this one, actually. Sean Brady versus Kelvin Gastelum. Sean Brady, so this will be probably I'd say his second really hard fight. Although, in fairness to Gastelum, he has been relatively inactive, not through his own fault necessarily. How he looked in his last fight, albeit considering, I don't think how long did he go without having a fight prior to his last one? Because I know he had quite a lot of time off.
He's got the problem of just sitting around and smoking too much weed, apparently. That's one of his problems.
Oh, sure, that's not true, hopefully. No, but, so it says 2021, and his first fight back is Chris Curtis, which, in fairness, is a pretty big fight to come back on. Although saying you can't give him anyone who's learned that at all, really.
Yeah, and he was on, let's be real, a terrible run. Chris Curtis, it looked back to the old Kelvin Gastelum. We had that sort of someone with the real grit to get in there and fight again, but he probably needed that time off to get his head straight after quite a few losses.
I'd definitely say big losses though, Cannonier and
against top fighters.
His last fight, he looked so good though.
Yeah, that was such a good fight.
And he didn't really gas out either, which is quite surprising because the amount of energy he was outputting, it was almost as if he wasn't ever not moving. How sharp he was on the feet, he definitely earned respect on the feet, which he needed to do.
And I still see Chris Curtis crying about that headbutt as well. Apparently, that's the only reason Calvin Gastelum won that fight.
He has got a massive head, mind.
Yeah, he does have a big head. No one's ever been able to punch their fist through it, have they? So,
He's a very his build. He's very stocky, and
mm.
he's kind of like he's just the perfect short wrestler, is really?
Yeah, unlike the Mike Breeden one, I'm 100% sure that Gastelum's got that Mexican heritage, and he does fight like it.
No, there was something about it one.
Yeah, but it's that one.
But yeah, Sean Brady, his last fight, Bilal Muhammad. I mean, it's a hard opponent in
Mm.
fairness to him. However, he's Bilal Muhammad. So Bilal Muhammad, he's underrated, and he
Yeah,
doesn't
he
get as
is.
much respect as he does. He should get so much more respect for what he's actually done. He's constantly on a tear, and he's not really mentioned nearly enough.
He doesn't help himself, mind. He does know how to not be very likable.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, just like you know, just I don't know. There's just something about him, and everyone kind of sees it. Me, I've always felt a bit sorry for Bilal Muhammad. I don't hate Bilal Muhammad, but for someone who just kind of has a boring fighting style, if we're going to be completely honest, he is chirping up a lot, and people kind of don't like that, and I think that's kind of why he isn't rated more highly. But if you actually look at the run he's on, I think I don't want to know how many fights off the top of my head, but maybe even like 9 or 10 with the Leon no contest in there. I might be wrong on that one, but it's a lot of fights now without a loss. You're looking back at like when he got knocked out by Luke or something like that.
pretty sure. Yeah, did he? I mean, I think Geoff Neal maybe in
Yeah, Geoff
2019.
Neal, that's it. Yeah,
I think he beat Luke in a decision.
yeah. But Luke beat him before that one.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
knocked him out too.
But yeah, no. It's looking at Sean. With Sean, he's very good, but he hasn't really been tested yet.
And as soon as he did get tested, it didn't look good, did it?
No, not at all. I think what he's going to have a hard time with is Bilal Muhammad on the feet. He's not super impressive. He's good. He's got all the
Hmm.
fundamentals there. He does all the fundamentals well, but that's not his strength.
No.
And on the feet, he doesn't look like a world class striker necessarily. Not at this elite top level, especially in that top five welterweight. Looking at how Gaston looked last time, if he looks anywhere near as sharp, I can personally see him just dancing around him, landing these big strikes. The leg kicks from him were
Hmm.
phenomenal, which is mad because you wouldn't think his legs are very long.
No.
But the damage output as well, I feel like with Sean Brady, he doesn't always respond too well to getting hit.
No. He doesn't. And he wasn't reacting well to Bilal Muhammad's punches. And Callum Gaslam has took out some absolute legends at middleweight.
I also think the speed as well, the speed of Gastelum
Hmm.
was so fast. I think looking at this one, I can see Gastelum taking this one quite comfortably. I think he's going to have a hard time staying staying awake, if I'm honest with you.
Yeah.
I think second round,
Same.
finish, Gastelum, that's what I've gone for.
Yeah. I'm looking down the same sort of path. I think Sean Brady is a very good fighter, and 15-0 before the Bilal Muhammad fight got the win over Chiesa. But let's be real, looking back at some of those fights, Chiesa was getting the better of him on the feet. And as soon as there was a bit of adversity, I mean, he was doing well at the start of the Bilal Muhammad fight. He was landing some big shots. Bilal Muhammad's face was starting to get busted up by the jab and the right hand that followed it too. But as soon as Bilal started tagging him, hitting with his first big shot, it slightly wobbled him. It wasn't like it was Bilal Muhammad doesn't have the power to put you on skates with one punch. He hit him big, didn't got a sort of reaction and just continued with the pressure, and it did not take long before Sean Brady broke. And if you're breaking in front of a guy like Calvin Gastelum, he's not gonna do what Bilal Muhammad did. He's gonna take your head off, and he's so nasty in the pocket. Chris Curtis, in my opinion, one of the best fighters, maybe not in the UFC, but kind of getting onto that path in the pocket. And Calvin Gastelum stood there and dirty boxed with him the whole time, boxed in the pocket and won that fight. An excellent fight they both put on, but I do think he just edged it. Some people thought it was the wrong decision. Um, and I really don't like that matchup for Brady. So I mean, I've called a lot of early knockouts already. I think I've gone second round every one, but I'm going first round. I think he's going to catch him with a slip left straight after. His boxing's clean. Brady can miss with anything overextend, and we've seen Gastelum do that pull counter many times, knocked out Michael Bisping with it just after he lost the title. So, yeah, I think that's sort of going to be what happens, and I think he's going to hit Brady hard early, drop him, I'd love to see this go to the ground because you don't get to see it from Gaston much, but I think he'll get hurt too much on the feet first.
I do think that Sean, he doesn't really put on a pacer, does he?
No.
He fights at a high intensity because he does throw at a high intensity, but he's not in the pocket, which is, to be fair, probably a good thing for him.
Mm.
Gastelum in the pocket. If Gastelum's getting closer, Gastelum's getting in tight, I think that's one way it could maybe go to the ground
Yeah.
because I think that would be probably the best way for Sean to potentially maybe save himself or score a few points. At the same time, Gaslam's wrestling, he is also very good at wrestling.
Yeah.
We all know how good Gaslam is at grappling. With Sean, Kelvin had that dog in him, doesn't he really?
Yeah, he does.
And that's why it's going to come down to it. And this is how it works as well. When, like, for example, we talk about Clay Guida. Clay Guida has a dog in him, but he's too one dimensional
Mm.
to actually really do anything with it. It doesn't work against his high level opponents. Kelvin Gastelum, the reason why he is so effective as a high level opponent with this dog in him is because he's so versatile.
Yeah.
So that versatility in that.
And it's an interesting point, an interesting fact that he's moving down to welterweight as well. For a long time, people have been saying, he's kind of just an overweight welterweight fighting a middleweight, and he had so much success there doing it. He's had a couple fights at welterweight in the UFC before. Had a decent close fight with Tyron Woodley years and years ago, which Tyron Woodley was an absolute animal back then, and he lost a split decision to Neil Magny as well, and Neil Magny was a very good fighter too. So, with all the improvements he has made, going back down to welterweight now is, in my opinion, the right career choice. And if it does benefit him, we could see it have an absolute beast in this welterweight division.
I definitely so it would be interesting as well because welterweight is also I feel like a division which is not necessarily I don't want to say stable at the top,
Mm.
but it's very hard to see anyone being Edwards.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you got people like Kobe Covington and stuff like that at the top of the division. They're not, and even Leon Edwards. I mean, we're big fans, but they're not begging for fights, are they? They're quite happy to have two fights in a year and sit out and just probably look at their gold shiny belt for as long as they can.
Oh, definitely so.
But yeah, so I'm going Calvin Gastelum first round. What did you go with?
I went second round.
So getting on to the next fight, again, just showing how much of a banger this fight night card is. Rob Font against Devson Figueiredo. Figueiredo, a former champ at flyweight and not a dominant champ, but probably one of the most brutal champs we've ever seen in the damage and power and just all out strength and skill set that he has. He's one of those fighters that everyone just loves to watch because of their fighting style. Just walks forward, looking to take your head off, and he is very quick and good at managing range. But the main stick out for me is he kind of fights with his hands down. The thing that he relied on at flyweight is he could take a lot of damage. Not many people had the power to really affect him. We saw that with Benavidez. Benavidez was one of the hardest hitters in flyweight history, and he was landing overhands on Figueiredo, and it wasn't even making him blink. So it'll be interesting to see how the sort of power translate to a bantamweight.
It would also be interesting as well to see how he performs really because with Figueredo he's a bit of a weight bully.
Yeah,
40 pounds.
One of the biggest weight bullies that there have ever been.
And it's interesting because if people aren't finishing you when you're theoretically
Mm.
not feeling very healthy, because there's no way you feel healthy after having to
No.
rehydrate 40 pounds or whatever it is. Maybe he'll be a lot more. Maybe he'll be better at this bantamweight. Maybe he'll be better in this fight. Obviously, in flyweight, like you said, he was taking these big overhands and he didn't feel it. And obviously, flyweights in the UFC, they still hit hard.
Mm.
They're still professional fighters, especially at the top. They all still hit a lot harder than the average person on the street. The average person is just a typical gym. However, looking at this one here, Rob Font is so dangerous.
Yeah.
Now, what Figueroa doesn't have over, in my opinion, is the grappling and the jiu-jitsu.
Mm-hmm.
You have to think, look at Sandhagen, for example,
Yeah.
half-pound wrestler in the UFC.
Hey, all of a sudden, out of nowhere,
What he did to Rob Font, past Corey Sandhagen.
with an injury as well. He had like a torn bicep throughout in the first round, and he was managed to hold him down the whole time.
I mean, it's wrestling injuries,
Mm.
but no, like, so Corey Sandhagen, in fairness to him, he had been working on his wrestling and it did look
Mm.
very, very good. However, his wrestling and his jiu-jitsu, it's nothing in comparison to Figueiredo whatsoever. Rob Font, it all comes from his boxing. His boxing is so clean, it's so accurate. He the way he throws, it's almost like it's that jab. That jab is really what keeps his opponents at bay. With Figueiredo, like you said, he does like to press forward a bit. I don't know if he'll do it this much because when he does need to, he is very good at circling. However, on the feet, I think Rob Font takes us.
Yeah.
I think that's something I'm fairly confident about. However, looking at how Rob Font did last time, maybe he's worked his grappling jiu-jitsu, but it's important to remember Figueiredo. Is he a black belt?
Yeah, he is
Like,
a
yeah. Like,
high level black belt too.
very, very high level black belt. I mean, I can't see this staying on the feet for very long, in my opinion. And I've gone for a second round sub.
See, I do like where you go with it, and I've been saying to everyone that we watched the UFC with for a long time now that the obvious path to victory for Figueiredo is to shoot the takedowns here, but he strikes me as a guy who's got a very big ego. He loves those brutal knockouts. We've seen him get so many of them at flyweight, and he just looks to land. He's just one of the most powerful pound for pound fighters we've had in a long time. And it's going to be interesting to see if he actually even tries to wrestle. Maybe the game plan for him in his head, in my opinion, he'll want to strike with Rob Font, but if he starts getting jabbed in the face and realizing he's losing, is he going to go the path to victory, which he should? Rob Font would have been working on his grappling, but at 36 years old, how much better can you get in that short amount of time? Figueiredo, we've seen him have nasty jiu-jitsu. He submitted Alex Perez in the first round, submitted Joseph Benavidez, which not many people have done at all ever. So we've seen his grappling, his transitions with Moreno in their four fights as well. Their grappling exchanges were just insane. Beat Panjota, who's the flyweight champion now, and Panjota could not touch him on the ground. So yeah, we've just seen how good he is there. And if he does take it there, I completely agree with you. I think he'll win. But in my opinion, I just think he's took a lot of damage at flyweight. He's done a lot of these brutal weight cuts. In my opinion, he's moving up to bantamweight a couple fights too late, and I think Rob Font's going to be real tricky for him on the feet. God, I don't know who I'm going to pick in this one because I love Figueiredo, but it's a hard one. I think I'm going Rob Font to be honest.
Okay.
I think the jab's going to be a big problem. Oh God, I really don't know about this one, man. I am going to stick with Rob Font. I think the jab's going to be a massive problem. I think Figueiredo will take it to the ground, but I think he'll absorb a lot of damage on the feet, and I'm going to go Rob Font decision. I think.
See, I do agree with you to an extent. However, I also think that the moment Figueiredo is getting hurt, he's going straight to the ground
Yeah.
because there's no reason not to. He wins a fight very comfortably on the ground. It's almost he wins a fight very quickly on the ground, I'd say, or not necessarily
We
very
haven't
quickly,
seen
but
Font
very
been
dominantly.
submitted a lot though.
Well, we haven't,
I
but
maybe never.
we haven't seen him against Figueiredo,
No.
and that's the thing. And this is why I've gone for it. I think he's going to be so aggressive. I think bantamweight, it is a good point you make. Maybe it'd be harder for him because he's not throwing about men who are like freestone lighter than him.
Yeah.
However, I think he takes to the ground. He's dangerous on the feet as well. Rob Font, he does have a better on the feet.
Yeah.
It's very clear.
But
even with the jab, I think he bypassed the jab. I really do.
really,
Yeah,
Moreno was busting him up with the jab, and that's Moreno. Font's got one of the best jabs in the UFC.
I think there's a way though. I think there's a way through it.
Yeah, there definitely is.
I really do.
Figueiredo's way through it usually is to just bite down on his mouthpiece and just march through it. And I'd love to see him let's be real. There's a very good opportunity that Figueiredo is going to be the first person to knock Rob Font out as well.
Well, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
He's an animal, really.
Yeah, he is.
Walks through it. Like he doesn't. When I said to you earlier on before this, he doesn't really tend to fight in the pocket. By that I mean he's not looking to exchange, but when he's in, he's in.
Yeah.
When he charges and presses towards you, he's there and he's throwing strikes, and he is nasty. We've seen it at flyweight. He's going to be doing it at bantamweight. Perhaps he'll be feeling even healthier at flyweight.
Yeah.
He'll be able to withstand more.
God, man, this is a real tough one. Last week you changed, not last week, the week before you changed my mind on one, and you've almost done it again. But I'm going to stick with Rob Font. But for me, this is like 52%, 48%. It's that kind of close. Like this fight is, I'm so excited for this fight just to see how the styles play out. Because Figueiredo can get caught up in his ego and lose the fight that way, or There's many ways Figueiredo can win this fight. I think there's only one way Rob Font can win this fight, and that's why I'm struggling to pick Rob Font. But just that jab, I think, is going to be a massive problem, and he's gonna cause a lot of swelling to the face, probably bust up the nose, struggle with the breathing. Figueiredo, it'd be interesting to see how his gas tank is. 3 round fight. If Figueiredo just goes all out 100% because it's only 3 rounds, we've seen him in these 5 round wars and getting tired towards the end, but that's throwing like 300 punches in a fight. In this one, he can just go hell to the leather and really just try and get Rob Font out of there with everything he's got. And Rob Font is one tough guy. Like the punishment he's taken in some of his fights against Chito Vera and stuff like not heel kicks, but turning kicks to the face and just like a hook kick. He got caught with a hook kick to the eye, broke his orbital against Chito Vera and stayed in the fight. So this is going to be a great fight. It might be fight of the night.
The gas tank is going to be so much better as well.
Yeah, it is. God, I kind of want to pick Figueiredo, I kind of do. My verdict pick might be different to the one on the pod. We'll have to see because this one, after watching a few more highlights of them and seeing a few of their interviews, my mind could change on that one very easily. I'm so excited for this fight. And getting into the next one, the co-main event, Jalen Turner stepping in on short notice for Dan Hooker. You actually think this is a better matchup for Bobby Green, which I didn't. I think Jalen lost to Dan Hooker, but I feel like he kind of expected Dan Hooker to go away after he hit him with his bigger shots, and once he didn't, he was kind of shocked. And I don't know if Bobby Green can bring that same sort of intensity Dan Hooker did.
So the intensity is not the same as Dan Hooker because Bobby Green, he's not somebody who throws. He throws very hard and he does throw a lot, but it's all in the pocket really.
Yeah.
He's not charging towards you. He's not fighting like how Dan Hooker does. Dan Hooker, he's like a machine really, and it's surprised that has he ever been finished?
Yeah, I mean he got finished when he moved down to flyweight, and he got finished. I think only to the head. He's been finished to the head twice, once to the body in the UFC. Edson was the first guy to finish him in the body, and obviously Chandler got that massive knockout over him in his debut, didn't he? That's one that flew over my head.
It doesn't feel like he's been finished yet because the amount of punishment
so
he takes.
Tough. In that
every
fight
he has, it doesn't.
I mean, he didn't get finished until that Poirier fight, and I think that Poirier fight. I mean, he looked like the old Dan Hooker again in the last one, but that Poirier fight broke him for a while.
I think so. It's hard because there's a part of me which is thinking, well, Bobby Green finished Grant Dawson, so he's going to finish Jalen Turner, right?
Yeah.
But I know that's probably just not the case with Dan Hooker. So, like you said about Dan Hooker didn't really, he didn't walk away like Jalen would have expected, and I feel like the intensity which Dan Hooker put on when he did get hit with his big strikes, I think Jalen Turner he was covering up a lot, and he wasn't reacting well to it.
Gassed out a bit as well.
Gassed out with Bobby Green. Unfortunately, looking at Bobby Green, he doesn't really. The way he doesn't fight like Dan Hooker. So Jalen Turner, I don't think he's going to be covering up like he did against Dan Hooker because he doesn't need to. Bobby Green isn't that aggressive when it comes to charging towards you.
Yeah.
He doesn't charge towards you, and the reason why he didn't charge towards you is because he keeps his hands at his hips because that's where the power is. The reason why he doesn't really guard his face, although his defense is interestingly successful to an extent.
That sort of boxing, sort of fully shoulder roll.
But yeah, the way he moves his head, it's almost like he doesn't need to, but he does.
His head movement's insane. You won't get a much better head movement than that in the UFC. You've just seen that with how many high-level strikers it seems like he gets a lot of these matchups, even this one where I think, oh god, he's going to get dropped in this one. And he just slips his way through it, and he almost beat Rafael Vaziv, who's one of the best Muay Thai fighters in the world, probably. And so it kind of makes me think, the sensible pick's Jalen Turner, but if he can stand on the feet with Vaziv and gas him out in a 3 round fight, maybe he can do the same with Turner too.
Maybe. I don't know, but you see, because there's a really big part of me which thinks that Jalen Turner just picks him apart almost to an extent. Jalen Turner does exchange, although Bobby Green is kind of somebody who wants you to exchange with him.
Yeah.
That's where he wants it to happen. If it goes to the ground, that'd be interesting.
Bobby Green's good on the ground.
And that's the thing. I personally believe Jalen Turner mixing the kicks, he's going to be causing a lot of issues for Bobby Green.
Yeah,
I
same.
think if you can keep the distance, then you can potentially make them what you need to. Although saying that, this is also a hard fight because although I say that Bobby Green doesn't really come at you aggressively, he does still very much to an extent. He will go for the kill
Hmm.
when required.
Yeah.
He will do that. He will try and finish you. I'm going to go Jalen Turner. I'm going to go second round finish. Although, in all fairness, it could be Bobby Green
Yeah.
finishing him, and
Well,
I can just see it.
I don't know if you feel the same about this, but I mean, we were speaking about it. Didn't even seem that long ago. We were breaking down the Grant Dawson Bobby Green fight. I mean, it probably wasn't that long ago, and there just seems to be like this aura about Bobby Green at the moment. He's really hit his prime later on in his career. He just even when he's losing recently, he looks really good. The Drew Dober fight was tough, but he was piecing him up. The Faziev fight, the Thiago Moises fight, I thought he won. So like he's on a decent run, finding some sort of finishing form as well. He wasn't really a big finisher recently. He's been getting a few finishes. And I said last time that I'm picking Bobby Green just because there's a certain person that would kill me if I didn't. And it came right. And I think the sensible pick is Jalen Turner, and I could see him head kicking Bobby Green. That would not surprise me if that happens. But I do think I'll be interested to see what you think about this. I think Bobby Green's gonna mix in the wrestling as well. We saw what Gamrot did against Turner. Obviously, Gamrot a whole different style of wrestler than Bobby Green, but he didn't really fail a takedown attempt. Every single one, pretty much. He got not literally, but he got a lot of control time in that fight, and that won him the fight. And I think Bobby Green is a very good wrestler, good jiu-jitsu. I think he does struggle a lot with people with bigger reach than him, and Jalen Turner's got one of the biggest reaches in the lightweight division. So, it's going to be an uphill battle early on. He's not great at fighting from behind, but I think Turner taking it on about a week's notice. I think Bobby Green is probably going to lose the first round, and it's going to go to a close decision, and I'm going to go Bobby Green. I think it'll be a really close decision, but I'm going Bobby Green. Screw it.
It's interesting. I can't see this fight going to decision personally.
I think he'll
Jalen
mix
Turner
in the
is tough though.
wrestling.
Jalen Turner's tough.
Bobby Green's not going to finish Jalen. I really don't think that.
No, but I want to believe.
Yeah.
I just want to believe that he will. I know he probably won't, but it would be cool to see. I mean, who would have thought he would have finished Grant Dawson?
But Grant Dawson seems like one of those like wrestlers who's hardly ever been punched in the face. Where Turner is just, people used to get him in to help train for Anderson Silva when he was a young buck coming up through the ranks and stuff like that. So, and people used to get him to try and imitate John Jones and Anderson Silva and sparring. This guy's an elite striker. And to be fair though, Bobby Green, he hits that shot on anyone they fall because that was a solid switch right hand. So he's a sneaky veteran and he can land that shot on anyone. So Bobby Green's a live dog in every fight he's in, and we see that all the time.
I suppose as well, like looking at the punishment which Jalen Turner took against Dan Hooker as well.
Yeah,
It's going to be so hard to put him out. And if you utilize that distance management, which I think he's going to, but implementing wrestling, that's really interesting. I've not even thought about that.
mm,
But looking at how much damage he did take against Dan Hooker, I can very much see him. I went second round anyway, so I'm going to go with
yeah,
that. This one I'm uncertain on though, not
yeah,
because I should be, but because I want to be. I just
yeah.
want to believe
I
Bobby
mean,
Green.
to be honest, I think it's like everyone in this sort of group, everyone we've done the podcast with, is like a Bobby Green fan zone over here. So, when we are filming and set up, I'm sure you'll see some Bobby Green merchandise in the background. We've got some interesting news to talk about in a little bit about some Bobby Green going back to maybe a bit more of his younger days. Where I remember, don't know if you've ever seen this photo. I know it's a bit of a weird thing to bring up, but it was before he was in the UFC and he was really young. And there's a photo of his tail of the tape when he's fighting someone, and his fighting style's hood. That's what they've named his fighting style, which is hood. So you can tell where he comes from.
It's interesting, isn't it? Really, like how the UFC used to have their fighting styles, like Street Fighter,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
And like,
the Kimbo Slices, and
yeah, yeah. And you'd have someone be like a kung fu fire, and then all of a sudden they're just shooting takedowns straight away and can't
like
stand on the
well,
feet.
Kevin Holland is a Kung Fu fighter.
Yeah, yeah. He's one of the last ones left.
Yeah, I mean he can't even do that right. So
No.
no, he's very good.
Again, we got some Kevin Holland news to talk about there too. There's a lot of interesting things. So we'll get on to I'm pretty sure it's the main event now. Um, Tsarukyan versus Dariush, very interesting main event. Arman, you know, it just looked so good since coming to the UFC, getting the split decision loss on his UFC debut to Islam Makhachev. And he's not scared to shoot takedowns on anyone, so I can't wait to see how Benil deals with these takedowns because, he dealt with the Gamrot ones very easily. So the grappling exchanges will be interesting in this one. I hope it's just a scramble fest like the Gamrot, not like the Gamrot Tyukin fight. But how do you see it going?
So this is a hard one, really. I don't know whether this will take loads of place on the ground. I think that with Dariush, it's interesting. On the feet, he's got that kick,
Yeah,
which he kind of just spammed really.
the body kick,
Uh,
right body kick.
Body kick and head kick as well.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a very high kick, and it's interesting because I don't know whether or not he'll look to keep this on the feet of the ground. Dariush, he doesn't always necessarily look to take it to the ground.
Mm,
He often ends up there, and his jiu-jitsu is very good.
yeah,
I think I can see Tsarukyan shooting a lot, although I can also see him trying to cause some serious damage on the feet because, like I said earlier, like we agreed, when it comes down to fight like Tsarukyan, they are this new generation of
mm,
UFC fighter. Dariush is very good on the feet, and he's got some really good jiu-jitsu as well. We saw it in his, I think it might be the last fight,
yeah,
where what he was displaying was, I think with Tsarukyan, we other than maybe Gamrot and maybe one other, we haven't really seen anyone be able to do much with on the ground.
yeah,
He kind of just dominates them, just that 26-year-old energy,
yeah,
just on top of it. I think that Dariush would be able to handle it. I think Dariush would be able to, like you said, lots of scrambles, lots of
yeah.
transitions, lots of very good jiu-jitsu, not just of these wrestling transitions, lots of these high-level jiu-jitsu transitions. I've gone for my picks on verdict. I went for a decision, although I didn't really think about this being a 5 round fight.
No, I'm going the same.
Same,
I think Toyukin, it's a great point you make about that sort of 26-year-old energy, and he just mixes in his striking so well with his takedowns. And we saw Charles Oliveira cause Dariush so many problems with the left high kick, and Taryukin's got one of the nastiest left high kicks in the sport. He's so quick with it. We see a lot of these. Taryukin is not Russian, but he's got that sort of Dagestani style, just chain wrestling. And we see Umar with the same sort of kicking style as Arman as well. And we're getting a few more of these fighters, and they're insane to watch and really hard to beat. Dariush, let's be real, he was the favourite going in against Charles Oliveira in his last fight, and he was on an absolute tear before that as well. So, and looking very good. Gamrot obviously was coming off a win against Tsarukyan, and he dominated Gamrot pretty comfortably. Comfortable win for him. So I think it would be dumb just to completely write him off. If he's the favourite going against Charles Oliveira, you can't write him off against someone like Arman. Arman's very good, but Dariush has got the skills to win this, but in my opinion, he's a bit too simple. He's got great grappling, good body kick. He kind of dips with his punches. I think Arman even might have a slight boxing advantage, which, if Arman's even got the boxing advantage over you, then you're going to struggle. So I see him keeping a sort of kicking distance throughout the fight. I think that in the later rounds it will get to the scrambly fight we want to see, but I think first 3 rounds Arman's going to stay at kicking range, looking for high kicks, low kicks, nasty body kicks. Sounds like someone's whipping someone when he hits them. Just really nasty kicks overall, and he'll just be looking to damage him up, soften him up, and then maybe grapple in the later rounds. I think.
well, this is the thing. Both in which can throw kicks in range, both in which can maintain range. How I think with Tsarukyan, that you said about the boxing advantage, he has, in my opinion, the advantage everywhere on the feet.
Mm,
Everywhere on the feet, because prior to watching the Gamrot fight, we broke that one down. I didn't really think much of his striking.
no, neither
It
did I.
was there,
Powerful.
but
Yeah.
powerful, but the technical
Mm.
ability of it, I didn't really think very much of it. I massively underestimated
Yeah.
it, probably more than any other fighter I've ever watched.
And let's be real, Gamrot striking I mean, we didn't think Gamrot striking was that bad, but it's looked very poor, in my opinion. Gamrot hasn't. I mean, it looked okay against Fiziev, he was landing some good right hands, but against Jalen Turner, he was really struggling in the stand up.
It was really Tsarukyan, wasn't it? That was
Mm.
his best
Yeah, yeah.
performance, and he
And in my opinion, he lost that fight. I think Tony Kim won that fight just.
it's close,
Yeah,
close,
very
but it
close.
definitely edged away Tsarukyan in my opinion as well.
Mm.
I think we spoke about it at the time as well,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
because I know there's a lot of talk about it being a robbery.
And I think we both go back to that fight now about that's since we've been doing this podcast, one of our favorite fights we've ever watched because the skill level in that was insane. I'm just craving for another one of those fights. Arman Islam again was one of those sort of fights. He's a nasty grappler. His wrestling is insane. It's crazy how good he is at this age.
Do you think though that a Dariush Tsarukyan fight could be like that on the
I think
ground?
so, yeah. I do think so because we saw a bit of it with Tony Ferguson, Dariush. Tony Ferguson's very good on the ground, was a bit washed up at that point, so Dariush kind of dominated him there. But he's very comfortable on the ground, very good, good level black belt as well. Not necessarily the most athletic guy, so I don't know if it will be like the explosive scrambles that we want to see, but the techniques. Like we see Gerald Meerschaert scramble, and he's one of the most unathletic fighters I've seen, and he looks amazing when he does it. So I think Dariush is going to be similar. They're sort of similar in the way they fight a little bit, in my opinion. Obviously, Dariush is a lot better than that.
I do feel like though when we do look at Dariush and that, although the athleticism is not always there, a lot of the time it's not the athleticism which makes it effective.
Mm,
It's the technicality
yeah,
of it. Technique almost always overcomes athleticism, with certain exceptions. For example, talking about when Masvidal was talking about men fighting Amanda
yeah,
Nunes, having to
yeah.
take the pace down a little bit.
Mm,
But just as a general rule, when these guys are all relatively the same strength, or not with the same strength, because some of them hit a lot harder than others, but when they're all in the same kind of rough bracket, technique will always kind of overcome it.
yeah,
And we see a lot of these guys, I mean, a lot of these jiu-jitsu guys as well. The ones who, because jiu-jitsu on its own doesn't really work in the UFC.
mm,
It doesn't really work. It's when you implement it. It's why I think we're seeing Chase Hooper
yeah.
become a lot more effective because he's adding more to it. And I
Mm,
think that's why for a little while we have seen it happen with other fighters as well. With this one, it's really hard to call.
mm,
I would like to see it on the feet. I mean, I could see Tyreek maybe finishing him in the fourth
mm,
round. I could see
yeah.
that. I'm fairly confident in this one, but you can't discount
No.
Dariush, and I feel like to an extent he's almost kind of similar in the way which people have their perspective of him in regards to Bilal Muhammad.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
not rated
Mm,
highly enough. These fighters, both him and Bilal Muhammad, are both underestimated, and they're not often really spoken about
mm,
in the same level. This is somebody who's just fought Charles Oliveira,
yeah.
so he
And
need.
it's a crazy point. He was the favourite. Like a lot of people picked him to win. A lot of like credible people picked him to win. Obviously, Charles looked terrible in the fight against Islam Makhachev, but Dariush is he's a really good fighter overall, but I think Arman's just got this. The youth's going to be there, the explosiveness, the athleticism. I think it kind of just all edges him.
I think on the ground, if this fight predominantly takes place on the ground, it's going to be a really close
Yeah.
decision.
I mean, after that Gamrot fight, I was really wanting to see Islam Makhachev against Dariush because that ground, obviously now Islam's just shown to be next level on the feet as well, but that was a fight I was really looking forward to. We have got a lot so I think we're both going decision, right?
I'm going to go decision.
Yeah.
I think it could be like a fourth round finish, but let's go decision.
Mm. But there's been a lot of news this week. I think we won't go over it. We'll go over a few things. One of the main ones I want to bring up is Ian Gary against Sean Strickland. Interesting beef. Ian 22. Um, there's some real interesting things coming out with him and his wife at the moment. A lot of people attacking him. I'm sure it's not nice when he's sat here looking at Twitter right now. I don't think we're going to come on like a lot of other MMA creators have. I don't want to sit here and just hate on Ian Gary, although I'm not the biggest fan of him. But man, it's dodgy, isn't it? What's your thoughts on it?
So a lot of this obviously going to be speculation. His wife did write a book called How to Be a Wag.
It's
It was,
just
I think, it was like
mental.
an 11-page audiobook.
Did you
Now,
buy it? Did you read it?
no, no,
No,
not at all.
no.
But looking at the book, so she says that it was satire, and in fairness, it possibly was.
You think?
However, you'd also have to think to yourself, Ian Gary's 26 and she's
She's
40,
40. She
and
ran in 2010, didn't she?
yeah, 2010 to 2011, and
Mm,
being a wag's all about getting yourself a successful athlete,
mm.
husband who's making loads of money, and
I'd be a wag if the money comes with it too.
it's interesting, really. It's most likely a matter of just people taking the mic, and it probably is just satire. Although you have to kind of poke fun at it, really.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. A lot of it is. There's also people are saying that Ian Gary lives with his wife's ex-husband.
Yeah, I don't know if that's 100% true.
So that's probably not true. You'd like to think not.
Mm.
But Sean Strickland, he's been doing a lot lately. Actually,
Yeah,
he did make a video.
Should we just briefly, before we get on this, Sean Strickland almost got the opportunity he's been waiting for his whole life in being able to shoot someone.
Almost. I mean, he didn't follow through with it,
No, which is
which
pretty
is a good
shocking
thing.
to me, yeah.
It's a good thing. It's a very good thing. I mean, he did it in sandals too.
Yeah, when I saw Sean Strickland with a gun pointed at someone's head on Twitter, I really thought the video was going to play out a different way, and luckily it didn't. So, yeah, he's just getting himself into all sorts of craziness right now. Very opinionated man, and he's shared those opinions on the Ian Gary situation too. He's weirdly, it sort of seemed like he was trying to help Ian Gary. Like he really seemed like he cared about the situation, which is interesting. He does sort of stick up for men's sort of empowerment quite a lot.
He seemed offended.
Yeah, he did.
Spoke about Ian Gary taking his wife's last name, and
Yeah, God, that called it a bitch move. Taking the wife's last name. What are your thoughts on that? You're gonna even touch on that one or
no,
leave that
it's
blank?
absolutely fine. Absolutely fine. No issues about it at all.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll keep my thoughts to myself. Basically, Ian Gary, he pokes fun at everyone, and when it's given back, he doesn't like it, and that's very clear. Threatening to sue. We were talking about how much we dislike Logan Paul for this exact reason. Now we're getting this Conor McGregor wannabe doing the exact same thing. Let's be real, Sean Strickland hasn't said anything half as bad as these YouTubers that we won't name because they might be facing court cases as well if Ian Gary's going this route with it. Um, but yeah, Sean Strickland just loves to chirp in these situations.
And I think a lot of it is just poking fun, really. But it's
Yeah.
a good point you make about Ian Gary and the lawsuits. He's happy to dish out,
Hmm.
but he just can't take it.
I mean, he put a mugshot of Gio Neal when he's arrested on a t-shirt and walked around with it, and that just, for me, that's a real sort of
That's a horrible thing to do,
yeah, it's
really.
not good, is
Like
it?
that's not pleasant. So
No.
you're more likely for people to not like you for doing stuff like that than not. And his wife did also. She made a tweet as well about studying law at Harvard,
Mm.
as well as also talking about what's it called when you
Yeah.
accusing it of slander, really. Now, whether Ian Gary does live with his wife's ex-husband or not, we don't know about it, and I imagine that's not true.
But
I
he is
presume
his
it's not.
nutritionist and he made him a vegan, so can you trust the man?
Maybe he's trying to hinder his career, make him
Yeah.
a vegan.
Yeah. And he's not a vegan himself.
No, but in fairness, they do know a lot nutritionists, and there's nothing necessarily super wrong with taking advice from someone. It's a bit strange, but there's nothing super wrong with it, really.
You know what this whole situation seems to me? I do feel bad for Ian Gary because I feel like he's sort of just weird, where it's like he's just so happy to be in the spot he is in life, and understandably. And his wife kind of seems like the puppet master from it all, a lot older. She seemed like the big instigator in that whole t-shirt thing happening. She was kind of picking the photo and stuff. So I think she kind of wears the pants in the relationship. I've seen an interview where he's like looking at her, seeing if he can answer the question the way he wants to, and she's kind of saying no, and it's just all very strange. He's a young kid. I hope they're happy. I hope nothing happens with their relationship. It doesn't look great. There is just one more thing I think we should touch on. Kevin Holland and no, I mean the bigger name in this situation, MVP, being leaked. Dana White was on the Nerd Boys podcast, and they have all the matchups up in the background, and that was one of them. MVP in the UFC, craziness. I could just imagine him fighting Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Imagine that fight.
Stylistically, this is an interesting part as
Yeah,
well.
it is. Yeah,
Kevin
it
Holland,
is.
and I would like to see if. Do you reckon his antics fly in the UFC?
Yeah, probably.
Probably.
Oh, well away.
But I mean, like his out of the cage antics or the stuff he does once he wants to fight, like
Mm.
throwing pokeballs at his opponents, and that was very
I
serious as
think he's
well.
matured. He did keep the guy's skull, but before he did that,
Yeah. So it wasn't the pokeball which did it,
mm,
which is good.
it was the knee. But He's matured a lot as a person. He's took on a lot tough competition in Bellator. Maybe should have made this move a couple years earlier. Probably isn't good enough to be a real top contender in the UFC, but there's some very fun fights you can have with him. And, you know, everyone who's an MMA fan knows Michael Venom Page. He's one of the biggest stars. Probably got one of the best highlight reels in MMA history. Got the I don't know if you've seen it. Don't know. Probably against some taxi driver, but a tornado kick to the face, and he's kind of just staring and looking off in the crowd as the guy's wobbling around and the rest calling off the fight. He's got some insane knockouts, and bringing that excitement to UFC would be great. So yeah, no, I'd be so excited. We obviously won't give any predictions because hopefully we'll be breaking this down, fight down soon. I've heard it's going to be on the Sean Strickland Dricus du Plessis card. So I think UFC 297 or 298. So that adds another great fight to that card. Um, Basically, I mean there probably is more news we could to talk about, but we've been going a lot while now. So we hope you've enjoyed this week's episode of the Combat Chatters podcast. Make sure you rate us 5 stars on Spotify. Subscribe on YouTube. We're uploading on there now. Last week's done very well on there, so make sure to share this one around with your friends. We hope you enjoyed.